In our previous video, we looked at managing just the featured content portions of your homepage and your featured content landing page. This time, I'm going to look a little bit more in depth at managing individual resources or pages within your site. Let's just take a look at the About section as a starting point. Now you see this is a standard page. We've got content in our content area. We have a title, and we've got some template variable settings, which we're going to go over here in a second. And you notice this is a child, and as you've seen in previous videos, that just means that there is content underneath or in the hierarchy of your site listed as underneath this section, and again, these can be dragged and dropped and reorganized as needed. What's important about this is the child-parent relationship can be useful for displaying content, and to show you how that works, we'll just use this as an example. So here we have a document with children, and under our template variables, you can see we've got several different items, and we're just going to look at these first three. These last two are just utilitarian for my purposes. So display options, we've got the option to disable the automatic header image for this article. And we've got show breadcrumbs, text of incoming links, and show child pages. Well, what do each of these mean? Let's take a look at this page on the front end. We're just going to click on view here. So this is the About GRI landing page, and if I were to click on the Disable Automatic Header image for this article and save it, what happens is the header disappears, and now we simply have a white space with the title underneath. You'll notice this is very similar to how the videos and the articles page looks. Let's go back here to the About GRI page. But for most times, you're probably going to want a header image there. So we're going to deselect that and save that again. If we load this page back up, you'll see it's got a header image in place. Now, the header image, as you see, just changed from what we had before. The way your header images work, and this leads us into our second section, so we'll segue here for a second and then jump back to display options. Your header image works in a couple different ways. First of all, you've got the option of a manual selection. And to manually select, I can click on this button. I can go here to my images. I could go to uploads if I had uploaded something recently via one of the resources. And again, that's something you're going to see here a little later on in the video. I could go here, and I could select it. Alternatively, I could go to the folder where I want to place an image, right-click on it, click Upload Files, and then I could choose a file and select it from my hard drive. And then I could upload it, and it would appear here in the list, and then I could select it. Alternatively, you've got a selection of stock images here for each of your topics, and in this case, you could just simply go to one of these folders, find an image you like, and double-click on it, and then save, and then you'd see that becomes the header image for this page. We're going to go ahead and deselect this. If this field is left blank, the system is automatically going to do a couple things. It's going to first look and see if this resource is tagged with a category. In this case, it is not. Were it tagged with a category, the system would immediately go to your files, it would go to images, it would go to stock, and it would go to unspecified and randomly select an image from your unspecified folder. If I had a topic selected, or two topics selected, it's going to look at the first topic selected, it's going to go to that directory in your stock image folder, and it's going to randomly select from that directory an image to display as your header. Or again, you've got the option of manually selecting a header image to appear as the header for the page. So again, that's the header image, and you can disable that if you see fit. The breadcrumbs, that's what shows up if I were to go more than one level deep. And you see here I've got a breadcrumb that leads me back to the About GRI page. And if I wanted to, for any reason, disable those breadcrumbs, I could click on this and save the resource, and those breadcrumbs would no longer display on this particular resource. It's only specific to this resource. Of course, in this case, because this is About GRI and really there is no breadcrumb because the next level back is home, there are no breadcrumbs anyway. Let's go on to text of incoming links. Now this one's really important, especially when you've got particular kinds of resources like videos or books or web links. And how this works is when this resource is displayed with other resources, and maybe let's use our mission as an example. So our mission is a child under About GRI. And if I were to go to my resource tree, open up my About GRI folder, and go to our mission, and we're just going to leave this page, go to my template variables on this page, and type read about our mission, and save this page. If I go back to our About GRI page, you'll see now the button leading to our mission says read about our mission. So what that means is text of incoming links refers to the text that will be used inside a button link in a list that points to this resource. So I can redefine what that link text says for any link pointing at this resource in listed items. That's really useful. If you've got a video, for instance, you could put watch video. Default is going to be read more, and we're going to leave that as is for the time being. I'll go back to About GRI and look again at your template variables. So that's the text of incoming link variable, and then we've got show child pages. And this is the reason I selected this section, because you notice we've got a number of children here. And under show child pages, you see our content ends with a nice line, but there's nothing underneath it, whereas if I go and look at this page on the front end, you see we do have a list of items here. And that is what's defined using the show child pages. Well, right now, we have it as a list. I just want to go through here real quickly. If I say do not show children, obviously, if I save this and I go back to my resource, you're going to see that list disappears. If I select as a grid with images and save this, and I come back and load this up, you'll see it shows in a 4-up or 3-up or 2-up grid, depending on your screen size. And it shows an image, title, and the link. And again, if I had summary text, it would show underneath the title. Now I can go back and say I want it as a linear grid with images. When I load this up, you'll see it's the same basic idea, but these are now horizontal grid, a single line horizontal list as opposed to a 4-up grid. Now if I go to as list with content snippet, and I come back and load this up, you're going to see just the title, and this will probably look familiar to you from our article list. And an important point about this particular list style is that you'll see we've got some text here, and this text is coming from the actual content of the article, or from in this case from the page. So if I went here to our mission, I would say read more about GRI's mission here in our summary text, and I save that. If I come back here and load up this page, you'll see that is now the text that shows here instead of the system randomly grabbing the first few sentences from the content. That's really important because, as you've already discovered with your articles, sometimes this content can contain line breaks and problematic structure that doesn't render well as a snippet simply extracted from it. So there's always this override to put in the specific text that you want to appear as the summary for your listed item. And let's go back here to About GRI, go back again to our template variables, and we're going to select as list, which was our original one. And you notice there's another one here, as publications, and this is specific to the origins listings. So you don't really want to use this except for in instances where we're publishing an origins issue. And for the time being, I'll probably need to give you a little hand with that until you get a feel for how that works. So we're going to go back to as list, save this again. We'll go back here and load this page up. And here we're back to the original format as it was. So that's our show child pages. Very useful for any document that contains children. Good way to show the children without any manual editing whatsoever. And again, as you change the structure and content of the child items under this, that list will automatically change as well. All right, let's go to our images and media. We've already talked a little bit about the header image. Now, what's the purpose of the icon image? Okay, well, the icon image, again, is related to your lists. If we go back here and view our page, and let's say, for instance, let's switch this back to do as grid with images just for the sake of demonstration. And we're going to load this up. Okay, so right now, you're going to see we've got sort of random images there. And again, that's because if there's nothing defined for either the header or the icon image, the system is going to go through and randomly select either from the unspecified folder, or again, if this is tagged with a topic, from the topic folder, an image to use for both the header and the icon. And by icon, we simply mean the smaller image used in list contexts. So if I were to remove this, and I'm going to, well, we're going to save this. This is unrelated to what we're working on right now. Let's go back and look at one of these sub-pages. Let's look at the About Home Office Staff. If I go to my template variables and I go to images and media, I see neither one of these are selected. Now, if I were to select a header image that was used on this page, then that header image would be used as the icon image. If I select a header image and an icon image, and the mechanism for selecting an icon image is exactly the same as selecting a header image, then the icon image will be used within the context of the list, but the header image will be used within the context of the page itself. So this is just basically an additional override to select a specific image to appear as the icon image for a list. And then we've got show icon image in resource content. Now, the way that works may or may not be useful in some contexts, but basically the purpose is this. If we had, for instance, let's go to the research pages here, and I don't think we have a particular icon image there, but let's look at, oh, I know where we can go. Let's go to the home office staff because we are using it here. So if we go to one of the officers pages and we see under template variables and images and media, we have Gibson selected as the icon image, and if we view our home office staff container document, we'll see that's the image that's showing up here, and if I view his page, you'll see that image is also showing up here. So that's what that little variable allows me to do. If I've got an icon image and I want it to appear within the context in this location, all I've got to do is check this box and save the page. In this case, if I were to deselect this and save the page and we go back and view his page again, you'll see that image is no longer showing. So it's just a quick way to use that icon image as an embedded photo within the content itself. Now, we'll get into actually placing images inside the content when we get to your articles section. But that goes over all of our template variables under display options and images and media. Now, featured content. You're going to need to ignore this on every page except for the home page and your featured content container document. It's only relevant to those two documents. And again, these last two items, we're going to just ignore. Those are utility items for my use. All right, so we've looked at the template variables, and we've looked at how the settings of those template variables define the way content appears on the front end of your site, especially in relationship to parents and children. And if you were to go through each of these pages, for instance, research, you're going to see each one of these probably has a linear grid with image. It's got its own display settings in place, and here we've got the staff displayed, etc. So I think most of that should make pretty good sense to you, and that's how the template variables work. Now let's look back at our settings tab. The settings tab is important for very particular reasons. You're not going to use this section as much, but there's definitely some stuff here you're going to find useful. First of all, you're going to see we've got our parent resource. Our parent resource literally just defines where this is in the hierarchy of your site. In this case, this is a child of About GRI. And as you drag and drop items, this would automatically reset. Now, if you ever wanted to, you could actually click on this and then select a different parent and save the resource to manually define the parent that you want this to be attached to. We're not going to do that in this case. I'm going to go ahead and close that document so we don't risk causing trouble. And we'll open this up again. All right, so that's to define a parent resource, and you see in this case it's blank because it is at the root level. There is no parent resource that it's identified by. Resource type. Now you see here we've got document, static resource, symlink, web link. Now this relates specifically to items that you see when you create new document, static resource, symlink, web link, etc. That's what this resource type is all about. And in general, you're going to want to leave this alone. It will be automatically defined as you create new content and as you create content of a specific nature. Content type you can pretty much leave alone except for the case of static resources, which we will get to shortly. Content disposition, again, is only really in relationship to static resources, which, again, I will get to here in just a moment. And menu index. The menu index is specific to its position, or this article's or item's position within the context of your resource tree. And as you drag and drop items within a list, this menu index would automatically reset. Okay, and then we've got published on, published date, and unpublished date. These can be a little bit confusing. I'll try to be as clear as I can. Published on is the date that's set the moment this page is saved with the publish box checked. I'm sorry, the publish box checked. At that moment, this becomes defined as the date that this particular item or resource was published and made public to the front end of your website. Publish date, which sounds very similar but is actually quite dissimilar. If you roll over here, you can see the tooltip. If you set a publish date, the resource will be published as soon as a publish date is reached. So this is a date you define for future publication. If I wanted this item to be published sometime in the future, say within a few weeks, I could click here and define that date and save the resource. And then this would no longer be relevant. In fact, it would probably disappear altogether. And it would be published on the date that we define here. And again, unpublished date is exactly the same as published date in that it defines a future date, but in this case, it's a date for this resource to become unpublished. So if you have events or a featured item that you only want to appear for a certain period of time, you can define a future published date and a future unpublished date. Again, these refer to future dates and will automatically affect the disposition of your content, either to make it public or unpublic, depending on these dates, whereas this simply defines the date at which this resource was made public. All right, your checkboxes down here, you can mostly ignore these. These will be set automatically as you go. And the rich text is probably the only one that you may, actually, you're probably not going to run into that much at all. I think it's probably best if we leave these alone and not worry about those too much. All right, so let's go back to the document tab. And I think we've covered most of this. So your title and your long title, I think this is probably the only thing we really haven't discussed. I'll run through each of these just in case. All right, so title and long title are very similar. It can be quite confusing, and I'll try to make it clear how this works. The title option is what becomes the item's title here in your resource tree, and if no long title is selected, is also what becomes the title of the document on the front end of your page. And just as a quick example, if I were to type in here about Geoscience Research Institute and save this file, you're going to see it still says about GRI here on the back end. But if I go to the front end and reload this, you're going to see now it says about Geoscience Research Institute as the heading for the page. So this is basically an override field in instances where you want a longer title to appear on the front end, but you don't want to clutter up your resource tree with a really long title. So you can use both fields as needed. A subtitle or description is basically a second level in the hierarchy for displaying text within the context of lists. And this is most prevalent within your articles. And let's just quickly view your article list. I don't actually know if we have any here with that content defined. But if we did include a subtitle or description text here, this becomes a more prominent bit of text in the list. And I actually don't think this would affect, and let's just test this out. Actually, let's not do it on this one. Let's take a look at a subpage and see if this actually works in your list as I expect it to. So we're going to type in subtitle here, and then we're going to type in summary. And we're going to save this, and then we're going to have a look at, let's close some of these pages. Let's have a look at the About GRI container. So here you see we've got subtitle and summary. It shows up in this list type. And if I go back to my template variables and I go to About GRI, and we change this to list with content snippet, and I load this up, you see again we've got subtitle and summary. So it's basically a second level of text that can appear within the confines of a list. This would be if your mission page has a particular subtitle or snippet that you want listed here. And we can change the styling of this to be bold or minimized, again, depending on how you end up using this field, or if indeed you end up using the field at all. This is basically a minimized or a secondary summary field. Let's clear these out to make sure we're not showing content we don't want to show. I think most of the time you're going to find the summary field will give you all that you need, but you do have that additional higher level hierarchy item if needed. And we can talk about styling that as necessary. All right, so I think everything we've just covered applies to pretty much everything you're going to see on the website in terms of template variables and in terms of the hierarchy of parent and child. What we need to cover here a little bit is the settings tab and our resource type and our content type when it comes to static resources. Now, static resources you're not using a lot on your current website. We do have a couple of instances, and we'll just take a look at those. So your posters and your PowerPoints are all static resources, and the static resource is essentially a database reference that allows you to point people to a file on your server, but still define summary and title and imagery and all the items that you want for the sake of listing. But when someone clicks on it, they go directly to a file. And why the settings are important here is you'll notice that we've got static resource set, but we also have a different content type set. We've got PDF, we've also got PowerPoint and PowerPoint X. Now, this list can be modified per your needs. So if you come across different types of files that you want to vend, for instance, Microsoft Word or Excel or anything like that, we can create new content types to be defined here. And it's very important that this content type be set for a static resource, because if it is not set, the browser will not know what type of content it is and will try to download it as HTML, and it'll come up as a bunch of garbled code. Now the second option here is this content disposition. And here you've got two options, inline and attachment. And basically what this means is inline, the browser will try to render it as a web page. And that's really only going to work probably for PDFs. And then attachment is it forces the browser to download it as a file. So in most cases, you're going to want to use attachment for anything besides a PDF for certain. You're going to want to set it as attachment. So when you're creating a static resource, that's an additional step you need to take beyond what you would with a web link or a standard page. You need to make sure that you go to the settings, that you define the content type from this list, and if it doesn't exist, contact me and we'll create it. And then you need to go to content disposition and make sure if it's not a PDF, you set it to attachment so that the browser knows to download the file. And then again, you can create the same items or same data points that you would for anything else. And then when you go to view a list of these items, you'll see they've got images and they've got titles and they've got text. We could say download poster for our link text. Oh, excuse me. So I think that's really the primary items we need to worry about in terms of managing the content and I should say the metadata relating to resources and managing the display of children and parents. So I'll go ahead and stop this video for now. We're going to move on in the next section to dealing with articles and specifically with using the content editor and how that's going to work.